Democracy. It belongs to us. Whether we're native or newcomer, young or old, white, black, or brown, we all want strong public schools and strong neighborhoods. For far too long, politicians and corporations have deprived our communities, fueled division, and tried to block our efforts to create quality schools. But there is strength in our collective voice, in our ability to lead and advance our professions, to organize, and to build a movement. Together, we can make sure our voices are heard, our rights are respected, and every student has a high-quality education. We are NEA. We are education leaders. This is our opportunity to build and continue learning. And it is our democracy, our responsibility, and our time. Welcome to the first ever virtual NEA National Leadership Summit.
Good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to the 2021 NEA Leadership Summit. We are overjoyed to have you with us for this very first virtual summit. And we promise you will have an experience that is rich and memorable, and above all, you will have an experience that will prepare you to lead at this critical moment in the history of our nation. When you leave this space on Sunday, you won't just feel inspired, although we certainly hope you will feel that way. You will have within your hearts, your hands, and your minds proven tools and strategies you need to start building or continue building your personal leadership path. Now, I say all of that fully aware of how COVID has changed all of our lives. These last 12 months have been incredibly hard and challenging. They've been scary and they have been absolutely exhausting. I see the toll this year has taken on your mental and physical and emotional health. We see how rolling quarantines and so much loss has impacted our students and upended so many of their lives. But I've also been so incredibly heartened by what I can only describe as real life bravery, a level of courage that you exhibit every single day. You inspire me, you encourage me, and I am so very proud of how you have continued to support our students and their families and our communities, even at a time that demands that you give so much more to your own families. So let me just thank you for showing up every single day. Thank you for devoting this weekend to our summit when you could easily be getting some much needed R&R. You know, until very recently, our leadership development program was built around a 6-point leadership competency framework: advocacy, communication, governance and leadership, leading our professions, organizing, and fiscal health. We thought about not just this year, because we started this before this year, but as we started thinking about our students' needs and our own needs as educators, we realized that we had a gap, that we needed to add a 7th competency. And we worked on that with a team of incredible practitioners this past 18 months. And you will see that we now have that 7th competency, social and emotional intelligence. This competency is about understanding the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and behaviors that create healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, demonstrates ability to feel and show empathy, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible, caring decisions. It's about self-awareness. It's about having the willingness to delve deeply into your individual thoughts and values, to own our emotions and motivations, and then to explore the way that those thoughts and values fuel or hinder our ability to lead. In every aspect of our lives, in our school settings, at home, with our families, in our communities, in our ability to help create that more just world. Every single aspect of the way we relate to others, our capacity to understand each other, is interwoven with our ability to understand ourselves. This seventh competency is critical to your journey as a leader, and you will be hearing a lot more about it throughout this summit. So let me say again, welcome. I cannot say too many times how much I appreciate you being here. I hope you came here ready to grow, to challenge yourselves, to collaborate with each other as leader activists, and to leave this space on Sunday as stronger practitioners and leaders. And now, as we begin this convening, we will start with an acknowledgement of America's first people's stewardship over the land we inhabit.
Jamai, and thank you for having me. My name is Galuchuk. My English name is Ricky Lind Jr., and I teach music in Anchorage, Alaska for the Anchorage School District. We begin by acknowledging that we meet on the traditional lands served by America's first people. We honor America's first people and all elders, past, present, and emerging, and we are called on to learn and share what we learn about the tribal history, culture, and contributions that have been suppressed in telling the story of America. Welcome to the 2021 Virtual NEA National Leadership Summit.
Oh my, it is always so important that we stop and make that acknowledgement. And we hope that you incorporate that acknowledgement in every convening you have. Let me begin, as we also must, talking about how we create a space that is safe, that allows you to be courageous, but also allows you to protect each other so that you can ensure that not only you have a rich and rewarding experience, but that everyone in our space, the one that we are sharing together, has that kind of experience too. So we at the NEA have developed what we call our standards of conduct. Let me review them with you. In this space, we will respect others and their views. We will recognize and value individual differences. We will promote mutual respect, understanding, and cooperation as the basis of interactions amongst participants in this NEA activity. We will maintain the reputation of the National Education Association by conducting ourselves in accordance with these high standards of professionalism. As with every meeting, if you experience any discriminatory or harassing or any unacceptable behavior or incidents, We need you to report them to two members of our NEA Executive Committee, Robert Rodriguez or Hannah Vandering. Their contact information is both in your program booklet and is also located in the virtual hub. Thank you. I have no doubt you will take care of yourself and you will take care of each other. Let us rise up with a greater readiness. Let us stand with a greater determination. And let us move in these powerful days, in these days of challenge, to make America what it ought to be. We have in this moment the opportunity to make America a better nation. That readiness, that determination, that opportunity that Dr. King talked about in his final speech captures the magnitude of the work we must do as educators, as leaders, as Americans. It is his powerful words that help me frame my own intention as a leader to inspire with passion and power and purpose so that our members will be compelled to join me in making real the vision that I've challenged us to make a reality. That NEA, the largest labor union in this country, the National Education Association, will lead a movement where we will unite our members and this nation to reclaim public education as a common good and then transform it into something it was never designed to be. And that is a racially and socially just and equitable system that actually prepares every student, everyone, to be successful in a diverse and interdependent world. I see the work of this summit as one of the most important keys, if not the most important, to bringing that vision into reality. This convening is designed to prepare you as activist leaders with the knowledge and the skills and the abilities you need to lead your associations and to make them relevant and thriving. And not just that, we need you to be prepared to lead in your professions. And we all know that strong associations and that ability to lead our professions form the very foundation of our highest work. And that is creating a public school system that serves every single one of our students, Black and white, Native and newcomer, Asian and Hispanic, every LGBTQ plus student, every differently abled student, every student that has been marginalized by the economic injustice in this country, every student, every single one should have the ability to attend a school that can provide them with all they need and all they deserve so they can live into their brilliance. And as the people standing on the front lines of public education, we are the ones who can and must make that happen for our students. Most of you already know, I am a middle school science teacher. That's right. I taught those babies with attitude for 30 none of your business years. And even if you work in the realm of education that is completely removed from science, okay, there's nothing removed from science because science is the basics of everything. Give me a minute and I will show you how physics rules the world. But I digress. I am sure you know that science is at the core of satisfying curiosity. It's about asking questions and then collecting evidence to answer those questions. So thinking back to what I said a moment ago about the purpose of this summit, which is to equip you to be those activist leaders with the knowledge, skills, and abilities you need to lead your associations, and to help you develop the ability to lead in your professions. I'm going to ask you to just settle into wherever you are sitting. Just settle in and become curious about yourself. Ask questions about yourself. Gather some evidence about yourself. If it's comfortable, maybe just lower your eyelids just a little to gaze, or maybe even close them. I want you to think about why you decided to attend this training. Let's say there are 2 or 3 things that you know you want to come away with on Sunday, that you can point to on Sunday, that will help you move to be a little further along on your leadership journey, because we're all at different places on that journey. Once you have in your mind the things that you want to accomplish, I'm going to ask you to set it as an intention for how you need to show up in this leadership summit space. All of the spaces that we, the leadership design team who planned this summit, have planned for you, and for how you will need to show up as a leader to accomplish your goals. So take a minute. And then once you have your intention in your mind, say it to yourself silently as a declarative statement. My intention is. And then we sent you this lovely leadership development notebook. I've actually been using mine for a week now, and a pen. Take a moment and write it down in your notebook. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. Just write it down. My intention is. As you're finishing up writing your intention, and as you move through today's sessions and offerings, I want you to think about that intention. You may even tweak it, and that's okay. It should be living. It should be living. As you learn more, you may change it slightly. I want you to allow your intention to serve as a roadmap for you, one that guides and informs you. I heard this said by a former Oregon State Assembly representative. Her name was Jennifer Williamson. I thought that she captured this really well when she said that intention is more than wishful thinking. It's willful direction. Don't you think of it? Let that sink in a minute. Willful direction. That means you have the will to make it so. Through intention, we see more and we create with more clarity and passion and authenticity. Our intention then becomes a spotlight for every shred of supporting evidence, always about science, evidence that we're on the right path. As you move through this weekend's offerings, I urge you to allow your intention to be that spotlight that leads you forward on your NEA leadership journey. So now what I want you to do, as you keep that intention in your mind, I want you to listen. I want you to hear from one of our students. That is probably one of the most important things we do as educators, is to listen to our students. So listen to Mecca Verdell, a student poet from Baltimore.
The first time America walks into a classroom, it is the first time it learns it has a choice. To show up every day, to raise its hand, to engage or not engage at all, but who will teach America that these are its options? Tell the parts of it that never knew it had a voice that its mouth has always been no holds barred and got bars and takes down bars. It's here. We're an educator who shows up every day and shows us how to raise our hands to answer a question or to vote whether they want to or not. They should understand why and ask why. Like, why would they have someone like that in office? Why do people like me get treated differently? Why am I getting suspended for something I did not do? Why this test? And why nobody asked me what I needed? There is a freedom in asking questions to people who make decisions, because those who know you are thinking about their power makes them remember yours. Because when America decides to show up, we fill the whole room. Hands steady from an educator who built us, so we build up and tear down and build again. Not walls, but bridges. Not pipelines, but pathways and possibilities for something better. For those of us who never got to learn this yet or aren't able-bodied by privileges we continuously cast our votes against, because there is nothing that can stop the future of us. Only the freedom of us, which lies in every classroom, whether we show up or don't. When our hands come up messy, we will know it was worth it, and this is proof that the work was done, and the cycle of who we have always been will continue, because outside the classroom, there are people whose skin will be called fair, but they aren't. People who want hundreds of thousands of dollars from others while never giving 100% to them. People who only want or care about democracy when it benefits them. So educators, this is your time to show your role in this democracy. Is not about acting, it's about action. How education is not only applying what you were taught, but learning how to fight what you were taught. America is walking into your classrooms, your workshops, your trainings, learning what it takes to become a country. It learns how to mold a state while you mold its mind states, ideas, how powerful it is. To have the right to show someone theirs, to show someone how simply adding yes or no to their vocabulary could actually change their lives and others. So step into your purpose and realize that America is not only your students, but also you. Showing up every day, standing in front of America every day, preparing for America every day. So when the question is asked, if democracy is what we want, America will raise its hands, and we can only hope that you will do the same.
Oh my, Mecca, you're right. We have a choice to show up every day and do everything we can to nurture and support, to respect and encourage the freedom of us, the freedom of our children. We make a choice every day to see our students' humanity. Everyone. What a perfect way to begin my introduction of our incredible keynote speaker with Mecca's reminder that our democracy is in our hands. Summit participants, when we were in the planning stages of last year's summit, one of the things I was looking so forward to the most was hearing from today's keynote speaker, Professor Nancy MacLean. I got a chance to meet Nancy and to join a book reading that she did. And I was so enthralled by what she had to say. That was almost 2 years ago, Nancy, I want you to know. And now here we are. COVID-19, of course, canceled last year's summit. But our experiences and realities this year have made her work and her message even more relevant. All that we have experienced as educators, as a union, and as a nation have made democracy in chains. Her book that she's here to talk to us about today. One that if you've already read it, I know you need to read it again. And if you haven't, you need to read it now. Booklist has called her book perhaps the best explanation to date of the roots of the political divide that threatens to irrevocably alter American government. Professor Mclean is a professor of history at public policy at Duke University. She is also the award-winning author of several books, including Behind the Mask of Chivalry, The Making of the Second Ku Klux Klan, Freedom is Not Enough, The Opening of the American Workplace, and The American Women's Movement. I can't think of anyone who is better positioned to share her work and insights as we ground ourselves in the theme of this year's summit: our democracy, our responsibility, our time. Then this great thinker and writer. She is a true friend and is in the fight for racial and education justice. Please, NEA, welcome fellow educator Nancy MacLean to our virtual stage. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be with you, and good afternoon to all who are with us. I want to thank you, President Pringle, for that inspiring opening and for that generous introduction, and for the honor of being invited to join NEA leaders at this important meeting. What a year you have all faced. Wow. So let me just start by saying thank you. Thank you to each of you at this summit so much for all that you've done to support your students and one another through this horrific pandemic. Other than frontline healthcare workers, no one has worked as hard to keep our society going as teachers and school support staff. And certainly no one has had to work so inventively. I know how strange and draining it is to teach on Zoom. But my students are tuition-paying grown-ups. So I applaud you on how deep down you have drilled to find ways to help kids learn in these hard conditions and to help them stay hopeful. I also want to share with you how it infuriates me too that so many of you have had to deal with elected officials who present you with impossible options and call them choices, with commands to go back to your schools before it's safe or risk being fired. That is so wrong. And it's yet another reason why more and more people are organizing unions in this pandemic and flexing collective power. Because they see that if we don't protect ourselves together, who will? In fact, another reason I'm so eager to talk with you is that educators and educational support staff are not only helping us to make it through a pandemic that never should have been as bad as it is in our country, you are also primed to lead in renewing our democracy so that such man-made catastrophes never, ever afflict us so much again. By doing what you do through your union and in your communities, you have already become a pivotal part of the solution. From vanquishing the most dangerous president in our history to winning a robust American rescue plan, we see the promise of a better future. But let's be clear about what exactly we are up against. After all, teachers, bus drivers, librarians, school nurses, custodial staff. You knew that America had pre-existing conditions before COVID saw us. You saw it. You knew how unequal our schools are and the toll that that takes on vulnerable kids and communities. How it builds, as Mecca said, not pathways, but pipelines. You knew that some of our state legislators seemed to be going crazy, fighting any policy that might actually help, even Medicaid expansion. What you might not know, though, is what exactly was driving that seeming irrationality and making the problem so hard to address through the political process. Ever since Donald Trump announced his run for the presidency in 2015, he became the magnet of media attention. And there is no question that his administration hurt our schools, our public health, our democracy, our people, and so much more. But a nurse who read my book got it right when she said, "I see now that his presidency was the tumor, not the cancer. The tumor, not the cancer." I'll come back to that. But what she was getting at is how it was the strange fruit of a project underway for decades. So what is the ongoing project that his behavior distracted our attention from? An ingenious, quiet capture by the corporate radical right, led by Charles Koch and the network of billionaire and multimillionaire donors he has assembled, of core branches of our government. We began to see that capture at the state level with the 2010 midterm elections, in which the right deployed unheard of amounts of money. Governor Scott Walker then sounded the starting gun in Wisconsin, taking away collective bargaining rights from educators and others in the public sector. My state of North Carolina saw a legislative hurricane from the new style GOP, as did several of yours. The capture project then moved on to the federal courts, Congress, and the executive branch, with assistance from an infrastructure of literally hundreds of organizations funded by these arch-right donors who seek to remake our country to their liking. This anti-democratic infrastructure now includes dozens of ostensibly separate national bodies, such as the Cato Institute, the Heritage Foundation, the American Legislative Exchange Council, and the Federalist Society. It includes over 150 state-level groups, I'm sure many of you are familiar with them, that align their efforts through something called the State Policy Network. It includes organizing enterprises such as Americans for Prosperity, Concerned Veterans for America, and Generation Opportunity. It also includes the litigation outfits and court packing efforts that brought us Supreme Court decisions like Citizens United, Shelby County versus Holder, and Janus. The Koch network, in other words, has been playing a very sophisticated long game. My research findings explain how this long game managed to win so big over the past decade. They also convey what that end game will mean for the rest of us, the overwhelming majority, who would be harmed beyond imagining if the Koch project managed to succeed. Owing to time constraints, I won't share the story of my book, but I will tell you this. It starts in 1956 in Virginia, when the state of Virginia was leading the segregationist South in what they called massive resistance to Brown versus Board of Education. That policy of massive resistance included tax-funded vouchers for segregated private schools beyond the reach of the federal courts. It also required the closure, the shutting down of any public school that was going to desegregate, which is how the Black children of Prince Edward County, Virginia, were denied any formal schooling for 5 years, from 1959 to 1964, while their white counterparts went off to a private segregation academy with state subsidies. Today, people remember that fight as the last gasp of Jim Crow. But it turns out that it was also the first big opening for what we sometimes today call market fundamentalism. The founders of that cause, including the Chicago economist Milton Friedman, took advantage of the racist reaction in the South to advance their anti-government agenda. They flocked to the side of Virginia's repressive white elite, thrilled at the prospect of tax subsidies for private schools. They framed their alliance with segregationists in economic language familiar to you, saying that it would end the government monopoly of education. Of that ugly crucible, I will say only one more thing now. The author, Maya Angelou, was right when she said, "When people show you who they are, believe them the first time." Because what we have witnessed these last several years is not the first time the libertarian right has leveraged white supremacy to advance a cause that I think of as property supremacy. What I want to convey to you now, though, is the value added of my historical research for leaders like you who are dealing daily with the impact of the long game strategy I stumbled on while researching that Virginia crisis. I'll state my case plainly. The radical right has been winning since 2010 like never before because the Koch network has effectively weaponized the ideas of a figure who is unknown to most people, but whose thinking is guiding the right's playbook now, much as Milton Friedman's did in an earlier era. This figure's name was James Mcgill Buchanan, a Tennessean who moved to Virginia at the peak of massive resistance. He went on to become the first U.S. Southerner to win the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences for work he started during that Virginia school segregation fight. His greatest gift to the political right was this advice. He told them, if you don't like the outcome of the political process over a long period of time, stop fixating on who rules and turn your attention instead to the rules and how you can change those rules to get the kind of policy that you want, then lock the new rules in with constitutional change. Today's political right, I learned, is using a playbook derived from Buchanan's thinking, and that is what has enabled them to get so far. Charles Koch actually boasted to one of his donor summits in 2020, saying, "We have made more progress over the last 5 years than I was able to make over the previous 50. By following this playbook from its origins in civil rights era Virginia to the present, we gain at least 3 vital resources that can help us protect and advance democracy and protect and improve our public schools. First, we gain a deeper understanding of the Koch network's operational strategy, including how that strategy can be blunted. Second, we gain a context that exposes why they adopted a stealth strategy, and this is really important. It was precisely because the architects of this project knew that their real agenda, what they are trying to achieve, is terribly unpopular. So the majority would mobilize to stop it if people realized where all this was heading. Here's what Charles Koch himself said to his grantees when he launched this effort in earnest in 1997. He said, "Since we are greatly outnumbered, the failure to use our superior technology ensures failure. In other words, use that technology of changing the rules so we can win." The third resource we gain from this is knowledge of the ultimate Koch endgame. That endgame, which they wisely don't share with the rest of us, is an incredibly radical transformation. They seek, over time, to impose total personal responsibility on the people. They would do so by undercutting our capacity to provide what generations of citizens have looked to government for, from public education and public health measures to retirement security, workers' rights, anti-discrimination laws, environmental protection, reproductive rights, and more. The Koch donor network, in short, seeks to enchain democracy. And that was Buchanan's language, not mine. What we're seeing then is far more than partisan. It goes way beyond Team R versus Team D. It is a messianic plan, decades in the making, to fundamentally change the relationship between the people and our government, and to do so permanently. They seek to pin the proverbial pendulum so securely to the right that it cannot swing back again, with changes that would nullify the will of the voters. To understand why having this plan of action matters, let me quote Mark Holden, the second in command to Charles Koch at Koch Industries. Holden gloated to a donor summit in late 2015, saying, "We're close to winning. They," he was referring to the critics, "they don't have the real path." I discovered that real path in my research. It starts with gaining control over an ever-growing number of states, now 30. The Koch path then moves through those state legislatures to alter the rules of politics in each one in order to choke progressive national policy too. Among the pivotal changes are, first, gerrymandering, using the redistricting process to enable minority rule to a degree never seen before, so that those elected officials in those state legislatures can choose their voters rather than voters choose their elected officials. Hamstringing labor unions, especially unions of educators, because you are the most powerful and progressive in today's America. Undermining other strong lobbies for the public good, such as Planned Parenthood. Then, with these core defenders of democracy weakened, the strategy moves on to the next phase, with massive voter suppression, privatization of public goods, such as schools, to alter power relations, and preemption by state legislatures of progressive wins in cities. And to lock it all in place, capture of the US Supreme Court and the federal judiciary. What kind of a country would libertarian constitutional change create? James Buchanan laid it out. It would look a lot like the America of 1900, a place where workers had no legal right to organize for collective voice, a place where corporations were free of accountability, whether for consumer protection, discrimination, or pollution, a place of mass voter suppression that was just fine with the Supreme Court of the day. And needless to say, a place with no Social Security, no Medicaid or Medicare. The vision is so reactionary that, as Common Cause has warned, it literally seeks to roll back the 20th century. What then does all of this mean for education leaders like you? If we have the Koch battle plan, if we now know where all this is coming from and what the real end game is, what are the action implications? What are the action implications, especially in this moment of great promise with a new administration and Congress so many worked so hard to bring into office? Let me highlight a few in closing. One lesson is that building up collective power is vital to save our democracy. As the Reverend William Barber of North Carolina, my state, says, "We" is the most important word in the progressive vocabulary. "We" is the most important word in the progressive vocabulary. The only way to defeat organized money is organized people. And you in the NEA have the most organized people of any union in our country. But another lesson is that taking stands on single issues, even big ones like jobs or healthcare, will no longer work as it once did because our political system has been so rigged by the corporate right. Until we unshackle the power of the majority with serious reform, like ending the filibuster, we can't win much. That leads to yet another lesson of all of this, and that is that democracy itself must become a key focus of all of our work, and especially at the neglected state level. I mentioned earlier the nurse who said she had realized that the Trump presidency was the tumor, not the cancer. Now that that tumor is out, we must cure the cancer. The cancer is the chronic problems of our political system that allowed things to reach such a pass. The escalating inequality, the dark money in politics, the barriers to voter participation, the partisan gerrymandering, the court capture, and more. As a scholar of social movements who has studied the Koch plan and thought long and hard about how to beat it, I am convinced that the only lasting way out of this crisis is deep structural reform of the rules of government. What kind of reform? Changes like those of the For the People Act that the House passed this week and that is now heading to the Senate. Reforms that would strengthen voter protections and election integrity, that would curb the influence of corporate and dark money in politics, that would end partisan gerrymandering, and more. The next stage is labor law reform and unrigging the tax laws that are starving our public schools of the revenue they need to serve their students and communities. Much of this program will have to go through state legislatures, so reclaiming them from the right will be crucial. To do that, we need to practice what some are calling democracy beyond elections. Democracy beyond elections, meaning year-round organizing to be ready for action as the need arises. And who can practice that year-round power building better than educators? You live in every legislative district and media market in this country, right? And no other occupational group has the community trust and authority and relationships you do. We saw that in the Red for Ed movement that was so inspiring. And as you put your unique power to work, know this: history is full of surprising turns, and we are living through one of them. In trying to take away the very democratic tools that enabled all of our successes among the majority of Americans, all of our successes from just everything, from Social Security and Medicare to environmental protection to women's rights to just so many more of the things that we need. They tried to take that away. And in taking that away, they have actually stirred us to build a wider, more inclusive we than ever before. We saw that in the 2020 election mobilization, that our biggest we yet brought home, even in a pandemic. So I end with hope, profound hope, because there is so much to justify it, as surprising as that may sound, given where I started earlier in this talk. But I think that we see spreading recognition across our country in every state. People are understanding that we are at a pivotal moment in our history, an all hands on deck emergency for democracy and for our future. That awareness crosses all sectors. You saw it in your Red for Ed mobilizations and their support from your communities. You saw it in the growth of local indivisible groups. You saw it among the students organizing to demand common sense gun reform, and in the determination to finally achieve comprehensive immigration reform, especially for the dreamers. The shared sense of urgency comes with a recognition that we need to step up our game to win the future. We too must think long term. We too must build power at the state level, not just locally and nationally. We too must work to change the public debate. and the composition of the courts. And to do all this well, we must make the alliances we need to shape the future we want. Because this is our democracy, our responsibility, and our time. With your power, we can do it. Thank you. Becky, would you like to join us again?
Of course, Nancy, I would be delighted. It's so good to be side by side. I wish we were not virtually side by side, but it's so good to be with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. As you were sharing your message, it just took me back. I have to tell you, NEA, like I said, if you have not read this book, it goes into such incredible detail and makes so real what Nancy just said to us. And she's right that, you know, building collective power is absolutely essential. It's critical to our democracy. And Nancy, I promise you that we will organize. And I think I need to add 3 of those in honor of our summit chair and vice president, Princess Moss. We will organize, organize, organize. I hope I got the right, Princess. We must cure the chronic systemic issues with deep structural reform. And I'm so glad you mentioned HR 1, the For the People Act, where it is a very comprehensive legislation that will help to fortify our democracy, unrig the system. And part of that, we must reclaim our state legislatures. Nancy, I know you've been watching as over 30 states have introduced anti-voting legislation trying to prevent people from voting. Which is, of course, is the opposite of what democracy is about. I am so, I'm glad, Nancy, that you brought up that democracy, when we think about the work that we have to do, that is beyond the elections. It can't be just about our activism in the elections, that we have to be ready for action between those elections so that we can actually live up to those first 3 words of the Constitution, we the people. It's we, it's all of us. All of us have that responsibility. I know that many of you have some choices, but I encourage you to join Nancy and me for a fireside chat, where she's going to explore and unpack some of these issues that she shared with us just now in the fight for our democracy. Nancy, thank you.
Thank you.
So, fellow NEA members, let me just say that with the signing yesterday of the American Rescue Plan by our president, Joe Biden, and an historic, comprehensive piece of legislation of almost $2 trillion, we not only got over $170 billion that will help our schools and colleges continue or return to in-person learning safely and equitably by providing the resources and supports that our NEA members have been fighting for, advocating for over a year, almost a year. And not just that, I hope you've had a chance to listen to all of the things that this legislation will do. It's actually historic for the first time in decades. We are doing something to address the poverty in this nation. With the passage of that legislation, we will lift 50% of our students out of poverty. We'll provide quality, affordable health care and housing. We will address food insecurity, because we know so many more of our families have been having to be in food lines than ever before. More of our children are homeless. We have dedicated money to close the digital divide, to provide our students with disabilities with those extra resources we know they need. This money will help stabilize our families and our communities. NEA, you did that. You did that. You lobbied hard for this legislation. You did it in the midst of a pandemic when you were already overwhelmed, but you stepped up again, as you always do. And then you went to the polls and you took everyone who likes you or loves you, or you told them if they intended to keep living with you, that they needed to go to the polls too. That's what you did, because you know that elections matter. They matter. And to continue to do the work that Nancy talked about for our students and for our colleagues and for this country, I need you to listen to this important message by Executive Committee member Hannah Vandering, who will let you know what we need you to yet do to protect our democracy and to allow us the opportunity to create that more perfect union. Hannah?
I'm Hannah Vandering, elementary physical education teacher and member of the NEA Executive Committee. Imagine what we could do if we had a magic marker and could mark up the federal budget. We'd add counselors and nurses. We'd reduce class size and add education support professionals and pay them a living wage. We'd make higher education affordable. While we don't have a magic marker, we do have the NEA Fund. It's our opportunity to donate $5, $2 a month so we can elect pro-public education candidates that will support our students in public education. Imagine what we can do if we all donate to the NEA PAC. Please join me and sign up for ongoing donations today. Thank you and have a great summit.